Hello and welcome to the Women Wise podcast. I am Janine Lingenfelder.
And I'm Sarah Habibi, and we are so excited to have you here with us today.
This is your space to feel inspired, uplifted, and deeply connected. Whether you're building a business, finding your voice, or stepping into your next chapter, you belong here.
And a big shout out to our incredible sponsor, Arman Jamula, founder of It's Her Way, UAE's #1 female entrepreneurship hub. It's Her Way has become a thriving platform that supports women in all stages of their business journeys. From providing a marketplace to marketing support and funding resources, they're here to offer the tools and opportunities necessary for success.
And your vision and commitment to women in business is life-changing, and we're so proud to be part of It's Her Way community.
And we're also recording in the beautiful Procast studio at El Garhoud, Dubai. If you're ever looking for a space that feels professional and powerful, this is it.
Every episode is about sharing stories, lessons, and real conversations that remind us we're not alone, we're in this together. So get comfy, stay open, and let's dive in, because when women rise together, there's no limit to what's possible. It is another exciting episode today. Lauren Hamilton, welcome to the Women Wise podcast.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
So awesome to have you.
I know. So Lauren, tell us a bit about who you are, how did you get here, and what do you do?
Okay, so 2017, I'm sat on the sofa with my husband in a place in the UK called Reading, just west of London. And we're sat on the sofa, it's grey outside, hammering down with rain, dark at 3 p.m. We're about 28, 29 at this point, and we're like, is this it? Like, is this where we die or retire? Like, what is this? Nothing wrong with our lives. We weren't running. Sometimes you hear people with stories of kind of running away from something, and that's why they left their country. With us, it wasn't anything that exotic. It was just really fed up of the weather. And we were in super like comfortable jobs. Kind of, we could have plodded along like that until we were 70, you know? So he wanted to go to the US. And that was a hard no from me. I wanted to go to Germany, and that was a hard no from him. And somehow we ended up in Dubai.
I was saying geographically, that's like, a very weird. Yeah. You literally went completely the opposite.
So he's in finance. So I think that, you know, the whole tax implication and probably nudged it along a little bit. Yeah, and I hate the cold. So it kind of worked for him, worked for me. So we came over in 2017. I was in the hotel industry. I'd been with a big chain for a good few years back home. I always worked in the corporate office. And then found myself in my first kind of on-property role in the hotel, right at the coalface, which was an experience for sure.
Can imagine.
And yeah, that's how I ended up in Dubai. So a few years in the hotel industry, and then COVID put an end to that, of course. I'm sure lots of people had that experience. It really devastated that industry.
Can imagine.
And then I did a few kind of contracts, sort of sales consulting work. Until I had my son. He's now 2.5. And that's where this whole ride skipper craziness came from, because I had him by C-section. I wasn't allowed to drive. So I wanted to get out and about with him. And I went back to work pretty fast as well. So I needed a way for him and our nanny to, you know, get out and not be stuck in the house the whole time. And everywhere I turned in terms of solutions to get us around the city, just was either underwhelmed or actively disappointed in what I experienced. Whether that was from a hygiene perspective, whether that was from the perspective of the level of English that the drivers spoke, or most importantly, the safety.
Yes.
So we've all been in situations where you're in a taxi and you think, why is he so close to the car in front? And we're going to make it out alive. And I've always been a bit of a nervous passenger anyway, to be honest. So yeah, that's how Ride Skipper began.
Wow.
So what is Ride Skipper?
So we are an on-demand chauffeur service. So we drive you anywhere you want to go, anytime in your own car. The difference between us and the other providers out there is that through what I saw when I had Ruben, I realised the reason that everybody was in a rush in these jobs, whether that was a safe driver or a taxi, it's all based on being on these commission-only freelance contracts, you know, the gig economy that we hear so much about. And there are positives to that business model, of course. But in my experience, and as I say, a very personal experience, it was not conducive to feeling safe in the back of the car. So I just felt like they were rushing to the next job, and as a result, you're sat there and kind of holding on to the seat.
Panic attacks, etc.
Yeah, and just feeling very unsafe and kind of dreading being out and about in the car. So we started it with a view of how do we make this different? If all the other providers are having this problem, what do we do differently? And we came to the conclusion that if we were to offer job security, everybody would just feel calm.
Yeah.
And that would have a huge
sense.
impact on the experience of the customer.
100% agree.
Yeah.
So we salary all of our drivers. They're all on our visa. We don't hire through third parties or anything like that. Everything is bona fide ride skipper employees. And so we have an element of control, to be honest, where, if you don't cut the mustard, you don't get the job. I always say if I wouldn't put Ruben in the car with someone that we interview, then they're not right for us. So,
That's a very good metric to use.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
yeah, we're pretty strict on our hiring.
So if you look back at your journey from London to here, what would you say would be your biggest obstacle that you've overcome? I know there's so
I don't know
many.
who's going to listen. That's what I'm worried about. Yeah, you want the truth? No. So going back briefly to the hotel days, I think it was very much a culture shock from a professional standpoint. Like, you're going to have differences when you arrive in terms of it's a different place to live, and you accept that and you're welcoming that with open arms. I didn't expect the business culture to be quite so different. And the business that I worked for in the UK and the corporate office environment was very, the structure was very flat. Like, the management structure, you could just stroll into the VP's office and have a chat, and to get here and find that it was pretty hierarchical, I hated the first 6 months.
Okay.
I really hated it. And my husband hadn't yet left the UK. So I just kept saying to him, just don't come. I'll come back and I'll just slot back into my little spot in Reading, and I can probably go back to the previous job and it's going to be fine. And he's like, you don't hate Dubai, you just don't love the job. And everyone goes through that, and that's not the sum of your whole existence in Dubai. There's a reason we wanted to make this move, stick at it. And he was right. I don't like to tell him too often, but he was right.
It's okay. He might not be
late
watching
now.
Women Wise podcast.
Yeah, but I think just understanding that, and when you speak to people that have been here a long time, I think a lot of people had that experience in their first few months where they go, what have I done? What have I done? You get on the plane and you're like, was this a good idea?
It's a big move. It's a very big move, and it is a different
Bold.
culture.
Yeah.
Obviously it's very metropolitan and cosmopolitan.
Yeah.
Rather, and I think people sort of see that sort of image of Dubai before they come here,
for sure.
and that's very different if you're coming as a tourist and then coming to live here.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And I think the reason why we've set this podcast up, why we want to do this, is because we want to talk to people who have been on that journey.
Nice.
And then got to the point where you're like, no, I'm actually going to run my own business. And it's amazing how many women we've met who have gone through that journey. They've worked corporate, they've had the typical kind of route in terms of jobs, etc. And then they hit a point where they just think, no, I need to do something for myself. And I love the fact that it's it's related to the birth of your son.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about women who've had C-sections and who can't drive.
Yeah.
Because I had my children in Ireland, so I had all of I didn't have to deal with any of that here, the buggies, and because it's like a military expedition when you go out with a baby.
Being in the house can feel like quite. You think, should I bother leaving the house?
Yeah. And if you're not
I didn't
driving
want
yourself, if you're not getting into it and leaving things in your car, that is a real challenge.
It is, and I think certain things are available here that aren't in other countries. You can't in the UK just jump into a taxi with a car seat in it. So we've gone some way here to solving the problem, but still being on an app, booking a taxi and booking a car seat doesn't guarantee that you're going to have a car seat that's disinfected or is the right size for your child, or that the driver knows how to install it. They would show up at the house and they would pull the car seat out of the boot, and they'd scrabble around and not really know what button to press where, and you find yourself sort of
And
helping.
that's already... No.
And then you're already
Well, they
anxious.
are. I mean, car seats are a bit like part of the Mensa
Oh my
challenge.
goodness, don't even. Yeah,
In fairness, I think you do have to have an
Like,
IQ
no.
of like 190
Run
to be
away.
able to install them.
yeah, and that's where actually a lot of our customers feel very comfortable, because if it's their own car seat that they know is already correctly installed, it stays in their car, they know that's right, and it's the right size for their child, that makes a big difference. And then it's about how do we make sure our drivers are safe behind the wheel of those cars. So we do 4 driving tests with every single driver that we hire. And we have, back to my experience of that not being the case, we have a very flat management structure. So it's myself and our operations manager, who's also a lady, and then 2 team leaders. And the 4 of us interview the drivers. And if any of us aren't sure, we call it the vibe check. So we've got these 2 team leaders, and I'm
women's
like,
intuition.
okay,
This
how's
goes
his
on,
driving?
especially when you get
Yeah,
children.
and then it's, okay, how was his vibe? How was his attitude? Because you can really tell straight away.
And do you have any female drivers as well, or are they?
So
all
right now, no, it's definitely something that we want to do. We felt that we need to hire a full squad rather than just kind of like peppering them into the existing business.
Okay.
But it's definitely on the radar. Yeah,
Yeah, because I've gone into a lot of taxis from the airport.
Yes.
I think I've had the same woman multiple times,
Yeah.
actually, weirdly.
Awesome.
And I like them.
Yeah.
I think they're...
It's a different dynamic,
It's
I
a
think.
very
It
different
is,
dynamic,
it
and
is.
especially...
And amazing that the city's thought of that, you know?
Yeah, it's great. I think
There's no
it's...
safer
I remember
place
the
to
first
do
time I got in, it was a woman taxi driver. I was like,
Yeah.
oh,
This is
wow,
cool.
that's
Yeah.
that's
Yes.
amazing. Yeah, I
Yeah,
love that.
really
They've
nice.
embraced that. Because some women want women drivers. That's, you know,
They
especially
do.
here culturally.
Absolutely.
And especially if they're going to drive your car and things like that. That could really, you know, be... I imagine that being a very big
It's
success.
absolutely on the roadmap. For sure.
So typically, so apart from women who've had C-sections or who want their nanny to go
Yeah.
with their children, what other customers are sort of the mainstay of your business?
The use case has been very varied. So the plan was to launch with an app. I don't know if anyone's tried to build a mobile app. I recommend don't bother unless it's absolutely necessary for your business. It's quite the headache. We're nearly there. It's launched. It's ready. We've got a couple of modules to add and then we're all set.
Nice.
But because of needing to start without the app because of the delays, so we'd hired a lot of drivers already and we didn't want to lose them. They were absolutely the right guys. And I think something to also bear in mind here is if I was hiring you for a job and I said to you, you know what, we're not quite ready, come in 1 month, like I'm going to delay it, you'd say, okay, cool, I'm going to go on holiday, I'm going to relax, I'm going to watch Netflix, and I'll come back in a month. In the world that we operate in, that's not the case. These people are relying on the particular job and the salary every month.
Yeah,
and
they
the
don't have
stability,
that cushion to
and their
wait.
families back home are relying on them. So we didn't feel it was the right choice to just keep delaying it. And I didn't know when this app was going to launch. So we said, okay, we're just going to start slow. We're going to put a couple of messages in some WhatsApp groups. We're going to see what happens. And the British Mums Dubai Facebook group was the first place that we started. Oh my goodness.
Exploded.
Inundated.
Double the number of drivers. within a
Really?
month.
That is
Really?
fantastic.
Yeah, it
Nice.
was crazy. We just
Well,
we
then
started off-
you hit the demand. Then you
We
hit
did.
a sweet
We
spot.
did, yeah. And people, we started off, you know, try us for free, see what you think, give us your feedback. Feedback is really important. Even now, we're almost a year in, and I'm constantly saying to people, I want the good, the bad, the ugly. Don't just tell me it's great if it's not. So they tried us. Obviously, at that time of year, it was sort of last June, so people were starting to travel. So they found the airport use case really relevant because if you've got kids, they need to be in their car seats. The taxi can be a bit of a faff trying to organise to the airport. And it also works out more expensive depending on where you live. So we work on like this flat rate pricing structure. So if you live a little further out, it actually is more economical to take us than it is to take a cab. Events, Coldplay in January, people were just banging the door down to get to and from. 'Cause
That's a
as soon
fantastic
as it was
way of
announced,
using it.
3,000 dirhams a night in a hotel, even like not a fancy hotel. People are going, well, I want to go to the concert.
Do
but I
you know
don't
what?
wanna go that bad,
You've
know?
just solved a problem that I've had, which is
100%.
how do I get down to a
Hit
concert
me
in
up.
Abu Dhabi?
Well, I booked you guys, and then I had to cancel because then the event got cancelled.
Oh no.
Yeah,
Nightmare.
no, I wanted to go and see who was there recently, Snow Patrol.
Snow
Yes,
Patrol,
And I
yeah.
actually had
Was
tickets.
there.
Someone gave me, my brother had 2 tickets. He said, do you want them? And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get home.
Oh,
I
those
wish you
days.
asked me because I would have definitely given Lauren's number
Yeah.
for you because I love
next
their
time,
service.
next
time.
It's,
No,
it's fantastic
I'm
what
going
you
home.
guys
I'm
are
going to go and book a
doing.
concert. This is...
Yeah, now you've got the problem solved. Yeah,
And you can
That
obviously
is
you can share the
amazing.
cost with friends. You can all
Yes.
like, I mean,
Yeah,
Exactly.
So how exactly does it work then? So how do your drivers get to the customer?
So we have shuttle cars that the business owns. So we have around about 22 drivers now. And they're on set shifts. That's another really important thing to mention. So what I hadn't realised with some of the others is that they're on this kind of when there's business, you go.
Oh, no.
So there's no kind of set hours, which means they're tired. And I had experiences where they were kind of falling asleep at the wheel. So we said, how do we legislate for that? Make sure that doesn't happen. So yeah, we have set shifts. So we have the day shift and the night shift. They're on a rotation. So we never mix the two because obviously that messes with people's body clock. And that also doesn't result in very safe driving. And then the shuttle cars pick them and drop them between their customers. So whether that's picking the kids up from school. So the typical route might be to the house to pick up their nanny and the car, go to the school and pick up the kids, bring the nanny and the kids home, and then take the car back to mum or dad at work at the office so that they can drive themselves home.
Right. Yeah.
For the events, same thing. So we tend to book, rather than doing shuttles back and forth, we'll book you one driver and he's your guy for the day. So if you want to stop off for dinner on the way to Abu Dhabi, you want to make an evening of it, and just let us know when you're ready.
He's yours.
And
there's no extra cost to that. It's a fixed rate.
Fixed rate, and that's it.
Amazing.
I love the authenticity with the product and the services that you offer, but the story behind it, I think, is what's going to make it more relatable for most not just women, but people.
Yeah, but the attention to detail, I think that's something that is
100%.
really shining through here.
There's so much.
You can have confidence that this is a good choice.
Yes.
At the end of the day.
Can I ask a question? How did you get to the name?
I
know there's
there was
a
a lot of
story.
brainstorming going on. So after about 6 months of whinging to my husband following the birth of our son, because obviously I could drive after a few weeks, right? But this problem was still bothering me. What if I want to take? There was a football. My husband's big into football, and there was some football, World Cup or something on when my son was born, and we wanted to go to the match and have a couple of drinks. And for some reason or other, I can't remember why, Ruben needed to come with us. We do have a nanny, but obviously she doesn't work 24/7. So me, Robert and Ruben are going to the football matches. You want to have a couple of ciders and enjoy. And then, again, same thing. We'd book these different companies and be like, you wouldn't ever drink drive here because it's an absolutely stupid thing to do. And I stand by that.
Yeah, it's a no-no, yeah.
When you get in the car with some of them, you think, if he's falling asleep, or he's been up for 20 hours, or he's, in one case of a guy that I met last week for an interview, didn't have a driving license.
Oh. Okay.
How safe are you behind the, sitting in the back of your car?
Are you serious?
Yeah,
You did not have... oh, wow.
That's very
That is
frightening.
very scary.
It is, and I think it just comes from sometimes there's a case of the left arm doesn't know what the right arm's doing. So it doesn't necessarily mean that those companies aren't operating in the way that they should. But if they're relying on, say, a third party to find them the drivers and they think those checks are being done, whereas for me at the moment, and obviously we're small, so as we scale up, I'm going to need to relinquish some level of control. But, I check every single person myself. If I haven't met them and looked them in the eye and been in the back of the car with them and felt that I could bring my son with me, they just don't get the job. There's none of this like, that'll do, or he seems like a good guy. No. So I think it's as you say, the kind of the thorough
check. Yeah, I mean, my mind's going, you could use it for all kinds of things. Like, say if your car needed a service and you were too busy and it's, far away and everything else. Obviously that's because normally you take your car, then you have to leave it, then to get a taxi, then to get a taxi back. And, so having someone to do,
And the RTA renewal as well, because it's slick, but you have to get into quite a few different queues and you can sometimes be there a little while for the testing. So we do that too.
Wow.
I think the list is endless in terms
say,
of what you guys
anything to do with
offer.
your car.
Basically.
That if you can't be there and it's time consuming.
Ride skippers.
Ride skippers the one to do.
Sorry, you asked me about their name. Anyway, so the brainstorming was with my husband for quite a few months. And we were thinking about, okay, how do we make it more informal? Because one of our big kind of USPs is that they won't show up in a suit and a flat cap. It's very informal. When they address you, it will be Miss Janine. It won't be ma'am, sir. It's very, you should feel comfortable. You should feel at ease. They wear polo shirts. They don't wear suits. So we wanted something that gave that kind of almost fun, approachable angle. And then when we looked up, so the skipper is obviously the kind of captain of the ship, right? So that felt like a good word. And then we looked up what does skipper mean in Arabic to make sure it wasn't like
insulting.
Something rude.
Yeah.
And the translation, and I'm sure any Arabic listeners will correct me, but the translation is almost Reuben, which is our son's name. So we were like, okay, that's meant to be. So ride skipper it is.
Good fit.
I'm
trying to think what the word is in Arabic. Okay. Yeah.
Love that.
Something along the lines of Reuben.
Okay.
Close enough.
Again, storytelling and relatability.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think so.
So what's been your biggest challenge to date then, do you think, that you've overcome, and how did you overcome it?
I think I would caveat it with this is probably one of the easiest places in the world to set up a business, and I don't have anything to compare it to, but I wouldn't have even had the guts to try in the UK. So much red tape, so much bureaucracy, not to mention that you probably wouldn't have had the savings because, the cost of things at home and different salaries and stuff. So I think it's a brilliant place to set up a business, and I think that so far we've been really well received. everyone we speak to, whether they're local or expat, are very like, oh, that's cool, let me try it, you know. So that's been fab. I think the biggest challenge so far has been the build of the mobile app, because I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah, you
And
really
I
have to
knew
know
I didn't know what I was
yeah,
doing.
you have to know what you're doing with an app.
But I think you kind of think that okay, I know what I want the customer experience to look like. As long as I can explain that to a developer, it's going to be fine. And we had all manner of hell with it, to be honest. And someone summarised it beautifully by telling me, someone that knows this stuff, because we got a kind of a third party guy in to have a look at everything when we weren't sure whether it was on the right lines. And he said, if you ask a developer to build a chair with 2 legs, they will do it, because that's what you've asked for. He said there's no shade on them. It makes absolute sense.
Whether it
They
works or
follow
not doesn't matter. Yeah.
No. And he said, if they build you a chair with 2 legs, obviously you'll fall down. So he said that was kind of the biggest thing that I needed to bear in mind, to be very, very explicit with what we needed and why, and don't allow for too much creative license, or too much kind of, you know, oh, you might like this, Miss Lauren. No. Do
Simplicity.
exactly this.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's what we've learned the hard way. But as I say, we're getting there, and I'm proud of the product now. But that was probably the most blood, sweat, and tears
Yes.
gone into the project.
So what's next for Ride Skipper?
Oh, world domination. No, I think
Before coffee tomorrow morning.
I think definitely we want to go deeper into the UAE before we think about other markets. There are definitely other markets in this region that would benefit from it. But certainly branching out to other Emirates, obviously the idea of having a female fleet is really exciting. Whether we might bring our own cars into the mix is also a consideration. And just making sure that everyone knows about us. It's all about awareness. We know we've over an 80% retention rate with customers that have used us once, they want to come back.
Yeah.
So
1 year old?
yes, not yet. We'll be 1 year at the end of June. Yeah.
Oh,
So
around the
it's
corner.
going well. But yeah, just making sure that everyone has that consistent experience that I didn't have when I had Reuben. And we think that alone will help us to grow it and
Amazing.
be quite an organic growth, really.
Love it. And our question always at the end of every podcast is if you could give some advice to someone who was starting a business here, looking to, you know, because you pivoted really, you know, completely away from what you had been doing previously. What would your advice be?
I think sometimes you hear people say, I want to start a business, but I don't know what in. And what do I know? But my view on that is that that's probably not a great place to start if you're just scrabbling around. You know, I just want to be an entrepreneur for the sake of it.
Yeah.
That was never my view. And in fact, if you asked anybody that knew me, they'd say I was very comfortable in a safe corporate world. So for me, I'm always surprised when people just say, well, I want to be an entrepreneur. And it's a very abstract concept. I think unless and until you find an idea that you are really passionate about, because that's what gets you through the challenges, and something that has a personal meaning to you, I think, I don't know, in my personal opinion, you're going to struggle when the hard times come. So I think...
Yeah. Well, I would say entrepreneurship is problem solving.
Agreed.
So if you don't know what problem you're solving and how you're solving it, it's very abstract. It's
next?
not
You're
concrete.
absolutely
right.
Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
yes.
That's a great piece of advice, I have to say. I love that.
I love that too. It was fantastic having you here and learning more about Ride Skipper, and excited about June and the app. So there's a lot of stuff to
Lots
look
coming.
forward to.
Yeah, and
Indeed.
congratulations on your first year of business. Amazing.
Thank you very much. We're still standing. So
Yeah,
that's a
still riding.
start. Yeah, exactly.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.